Well, you can see there that we're hearing from the Press Association that Rebekah Vardy has lost that High Court libel case. Rebekah Vardy was suing Coleen Rooney for libel after Rooney accused her of leaking her private information to The Sun. Ms Vardy denied this, and her team said she had suffered public abuse on a massive scale as a result of those claims by Wayne Rooney's wife. Coleen Rooney defended herself on the grounds of truth and public interest during what has been a very high-profile trial, which ended in May. There's Coleen Rooney and Wayne Rooney arriving at court during those hearings, and as you can imagine, this has caught the attention of the global press and has become known as Wagatha Christie trial. What we have also seen throughout the trial is insight into the lives of both footballers and their wives, and how friendships worked, and how Coleen Rooney tried to launch her own investigation into how details about her private life were being leaked to the newspapers. So that judgment has just been issued in the last few moments, and according to the Press Association, Rebekah Vardy has lost that libel case against Coleen Rooney. Well, our correspondent Colin Patterson has been following the case. He'll be joining us shortly to give us more from that verdict in what has been a complicated and insightful court case about two wives of two of the most famous footballers in the UK. Colin, fascinating, but all the same, very serious state of affairs.
Yeah, Rebekah Vardy has lost her libel claim against Coleen Rooney. We're all getting the summary sent to us now. The easiest thing is if I actually just read this out. The court has handed down the judgment in this libel action today following the trial of the claim and the claim has been dismissed. The defendant succeeded in establishing that the essence of the libel was substantially true. That means Coleen Rooney managed to establish that the essence of what she put in her original post, the accusatory one back in October 2019, was true. The defendant's alternative defence of publication in the public interest was rejected. So that is the end of the second part of Coleen Rooney's defence. But the first part, the very important part, the judge said what she put in that original post, the one where she said ... it's Rebekah Vardy's account, that was true. I'll read one more paragraph, paragraph 16 of the summary. The court found that the claimant, that is Rebekah Vardy, together with Ms Watt, was party to the disclosure to The Sun, and then it lists the postings that had appeared on Coleen Rooney's private Instagram that ended up in The Sun. And the list of the stories is marriage, birthday, Halloween, pyjamas, car crash, gender selection, babysitting and flooded basement posts. The court considered it likely that Ms Watt, if you remember, Caroline Watt was Rebekah Vardy's agent at the time. Caroline Watt undertook the direct act in relation to each post of passing the information to a journalist at The Sun, but found that the claimant knew of, condoned and was actively engaged in this process. So this is saying that Rebekah Vardy knew what was going on with her agent when she was releasing these stories and passing them on to The Sun, and they would appear in the newspaper. Let's get reaction to this from the media lawyer Jonathan Code. Your instant reaction.
It's a disaster for Rebekah Vardy, an absolute disaster. And what makes it even more tragic is that 4 times Coleen Rooney tried to settle this case. The judge told her that the case should be settled, but she's carried on. She's suffered terrible brand damage during the course of the cross-examination by David Sherborne, which I think is what won it, and she's lost. I mean, financially, she'll have to pay all of her costs, 70% of Coleen Rooney's costs, so well over 2 million quid, 2.5 million quite possibly. But more damaging is that she has been effectively branded a liar by the judgment. You know, she denied it in a witness box, she denied it under oath, and the judge found that she had done it. So it is very, very damaging for her reputation.
It's a very long judgment. We've all been scrolling there madly. What has stood out for you from what you've been able to see?
Well, from the lawyer's perspective, the most interesting part of the judgment was the second defence. Now, in your introduction, you told the viewers that Coleen Rooney's second defence failed. Now, that was the really interesting one, because that was a journalist's defence. It was created for journalists, and it required two things. One, that the subject matter was a matter of public interest, and secondly, that the person publishing it believed it was a public interest. Now, the use of that for an Instagram post by a wag was certainly not what was envisaged when the 2013 Act was passed. So it'll be a great relief, I think, to the courts generally, because had that been allowed, then everyone who got sued on an Instagram post or a tweet would have tried to run the public interest defence.
So that's an important legal precedent,
It's
but
a very important.
the headlines today are all going to be about the fact that the judge said that what Coleen Rooney put in that post back in October 2019, where she says it's Rebekah Vardy's account, that's the only account that saw the fake stories that I wrote, the ones that ended up in the Sun, that is what the judge has said was substantially true.
Yeah, and that is such a dreadful self-inflicted wound. I mean, there was a late attempt, you'll remember, just before the trial, to say, well, actually, we think it was on the Vardy side. Actually, we think it was Caroline Watt who did it, and our story is that she did it off her own bat. But what the judge has said is, well, she may well have been involved, but I find that Rebekah Vardy was equally involved, and therefore, as a matter of law, she bears responsibility for it, not just because it's her account, but also because she was directly responsible for this particular tweet.
Yes.
So on that basis, the fact that Caroline Watt was involved wasn't enough. The judge found that Rebekah Vardy was sufficiently involved in the making of the tweet, of the Instagram post, that she's lost the claim.
And it's worth reminding viewers, Caroline Watt was Rebekah Vardy's agent at the time.
Yes, she was, and there's some remarkable stuff about this dear lady. She cried off from the being cross-examined because she said she was sick, which judges really, really hate. And of course, there was the mystery of her phone ending up in the North Sea. So from a judge's perspective, that kind of creates a scent, an aroma around the Vardy side, which she won't have liked. And she's inevitably also going to be influenced by the fact that Rebekah Vardy was destroyed in cross-examination by Coleen Rooney's barrister David Sherborne, the famous celebrity David Sherborne. Now, 2 or 3 days of being destroyed in the witness box meant that she was always at huge risk of losing this claim.
I was there. She was accused of lying under oath. She broke down and cried. Could there be any ramifications for Rebekah Vardy from that?
Well, theoretically, yes, because of course, when you give evidence on oath, if that evidence is found to be untrue, theoretically, I stress, theoretically, there could be a question of, well, has perjury been committed? Because giving evidence on oath which isn't true is a criminal offence of perjury. Now, I'm going to guess that Mrs Justice Steyn will not think that that's necessary. I haven't read the judgment yet, and we'll have to see whether she's very, very hard on Rebekah Vardy and say, you know, I've been lied to. But if every time someone gave evidence in the witness box and a judge found that their evidence wasn't true, they ended up being charged with perjury, the Old Bailey would not be able to cope with the workload.
Are there any options to Rebekah Vardy? Could she appeal?
Yes, absolutely, and I imagine that she will. It'll be very, very difficult because it is a massive judgment. I mean, hundreds of paragraphs. And Mrs Justice Steyn has clearly done a very, very thorough job. She will have done a thorough job, not least because she will assume that someone will try and appeal the judgment. And my guess is that they will not be allowed an appeal, but what Mrs Vardy will have to do is A, apply to the judge for permission to appeal, and if that's refused, she'll have to apply to the Court of Appeal for permission to appeal. My guess is that they won't grant permission, and that'll be the end of it.
What has surprised you most about what you have seen in the last few minutes?
Well, I confess I got it wrong. People were coming up to ask me, Jonathan, what's your best guess? My best guess was Rebekah Vardy would shade it and get a very small amount by way of damages, because it was a very harsh finding. The finding that someone has lied in the witness box is a harsh one, and judges are hesitant to make it. Now, if Mrs Justice Steyn has found that, which she has, then she must have been very sure before she makes that finding that she has been lied to, because it's not something that judges are very keen to do.